I only have 2 rules.
Somebody asked if
1,
I
try to stick
debate
to the
straight
subject,
men.
and 2, try
You
not
can't get
to
mad at
interrupt
me
each
that the
other
left is
as
full of
much as
gays.
possible.
What do you get mad at me
All
for
right,
that
Mr.
for?
Soypill, would
Not
you
my
like to
fault.
shout yourself out?
Yeah, what's up? I'm the Soy Pill. Thanks for having me. I do video essays and I stream sometimes. Do I give my intro now or just say who I am?
We'll do
Intros
openers
later? Okay,
after.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
me.
yeah. And then John Paul.
All right, I'm John Paul. I am a student at UC Berkeley, where I'm studying philosophy, economics, and public policy. I'm also the president of the Turning Point USA chapter here, and I've made several appearances on media outlets such as Fox News or The Charlie Kirk Show, and have done a lot of work within the conservative movement.
All right, Mr. Andrew Wilson.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Wilson. I'm the host of The Crucible. I'm a political satirist. I'm a political analyst, and I do debates of all sorts all around the world.
All right, and finally, Vince.
I am the Vince Wilson Show. I am a political commentator. I stream on YouTube, Twitch, and occasionally I will be on TikTok Lives. And I try to post as many YouTube Shorts and TikTok Lives as possible. So you can find me on any of those platforms.
All righty. Soy, you have 2 minutes.
Intro? Yeah, I'll be faster than that. So, yeah, the stats show that the overwhelming majority of political violence is committed by the right wing. But I wouldn't attribute all of this to rhetoric. I think many people need extreme circumstances or mental illness in their life to want to risk everything and think that their violence will have substantial impact. It's also kind of silly that we talk about political violence in America as some sort of like major thing when you can look at, I don't know, the Troubles during Ireland or any other political violence where it becomes a part of everyday life with paramilitaries. But to be fair, we're still gonna, centralize this to America. And I think that ultimately, if we want to look at whose rhetoric is more harmful, it's undeniably also the right. Democrat politicians, again and again, will try to build bridges and condemn violence, while Republicans, especially Donald Trump, will deflect, turn up the temperature, and even pardon those who commit political violence on his behalf, calling to defeat the enemy within, the Democrats, the extremist party, or in some cases, the party of pedophiles. So I think the rhetoric and blame is incredibly one-sided.
All right, John Paul.
All right. Once again, I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight and everyone who's watching. And tonight's debate hinges on whoever can pin the most blame on the opposing mainstream political party. And I never thought I'd have to debate violence against the party of death, riots, and abortion, but here I am defending what I believe to be the obvious answer to the question. Now, due to the left's tendency to misclassify and misrepresent political violence, I will be extra clear on the framework for the debate morally and definitionally. Violence is the behavior involving physical force to cause harm or destruction. And when that violence is political, it is set to achieve certain political ends. When we analyze which party is more culpable for the presence of political violence, we must look at the specific actions taken by the mainstream party that are plausibly linked to the occurrence of those political violent actions. The more impactful, damaging, and persistent that political violence is, the more culpable the mainstream party is as a result, assuming you could properly link the party to the violence. With that said, the core distinction here between the two parties is clear. Almost all violence from the right comes from the fringe right and is always condemned, whereas almost all violence from the left comes from the overwhelmingly present factions with strong ideological backing and influence in the mainstream Democratic Party, which typically normalizes, excuses, or rationalizes violence. The violence from the fringe right cannot be linked to the Republican Party since, again, their ideology is never taken seriously by the party, and such violence is always condemned. The violence from the left is strongly associated with the rhetoric, ideology, and the movement of the mainstream left, which is culpable for fostering a climate for such violence. In modern U.S. history, the largest sustained political violence comes from the left, in which the mainstream persistently tries to exclude reports of discussion or political violence, namely the 2020 BLM and Antifa riots, which caused $2+ billion of destructions, dozens of murders, and thousands of injured officers. Kamala Harris, as a response, promoted the Minnesota Freedom Fund that bailed out rioters, and major news outlets describe the arson as looting as justice, with many left-wing academics and activists openly arguing that property destruction isn't violence. The aggressive and persistent references to Republicans as fascist Nazis and literally Hitler also does not help. If you think it is good to kill Hitler, which it is, then it is good to kill Republicans. Maybe that's why Charlie Kirk's assassin etched in Antifa slogans and catch fascist on the bullet that he used to shoot him with. So the distinction is clear. If a pro-life Jewish conservative walks onto Columbia University, he's at risk of being assaulted.
You almost done?
Yes, this will be the last line. If a pro-life Jewish conservative walks on Columbia University, he is at risk of being assaulted. Whereas if a general Democrat walks on Hillsdale College, he's at risk at losing a debate. So I think the framework for this is very clear. Fringe right is responsible for most of the violence from the right, whereas the mainstream left is responsible for building the climate that creates these large-scale violent acts.
All right. Thank you very much. Andrew Wilson.
Shouldn't the leftists go first? So it's left, right, left, right.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, actually. I was just going in order of introduction.
I mean, not to tell you how to run your own show, but just so you know, I'm better at it than you. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Vince.
Yeah, I got you. So, who is more responsible for political violence in America? The evidence shows the right commits more of it, but the difference isn't just in the numbers, it's in the response. When violence comes from the left, Democrats condemn it outright. When it comes from the right, Republicans deflect, blame mental illness, and ignore their own rhetoric. That imbalance matters. One party takes responsibility, the other refuses. Own the consequences of its rhetoric, it becomes indirectly more responsible for the violence that follows.
All righty. Thank you for the very succinct opener. And Andrew.
Yep.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Very succinct. To the point.
Yeah, I guess. All right. So all of the claims from our opponents are going to hinge on studies that I guarantee you none of them have read. The soy pill likely will actually tell you the truth about that. He's pretty good about that. He'll probably actually tell you, you know what, I didn't actually read any of these. Vince Wilson will not. He'll pretend like he did, but he didn't read any of them. Let me tell you how I know that. I know that because of all the claims as I've gone through the two which they focus on, which are from the Cato Institute, and then the second one, which is from a specific project that an Antifa member is in charge of. The first claim is that the right is responsible for 6 times as many terror deaths compared to the left, and that's according to Cato. That's what they focus on. And the truth, Cato only focuses on deaths from terrorism and has glaring omissions, which put the entire study in question, which includes the fact that Michael Renault is Portland Antifa, and he's on camera saying, well, that he is. So anyway, Daryl Brooks, who's a noted black supremacist, in case you guys don't know this, killed 6, all white, injured 70, comments on whites. As we get into the study, guess what? Not included, even though there's a political motive. We can compare this. So, by the way, the Atlanta spa shooting, this is with Robert Aaron Long, listed as right-wing, killed 8. But what's really funny about this is if we compare it with Sutherland Springs, where 26 are dead, it's not included at all. So every time I make a comparison to when the motivation was pretty clearly left-wing, they just don't include them. So what I need to see is, one, I need to see in their studies that the 2020 Summer of Love, baby, actually is counted as a left-wing violence. It's not going to be, which skews the numbers. And also, I have an exhaustive, almost exhaustive list of left-wingers who have conducted political violence who are not included in any of these studies. Example, I think his name is Mauricio Garcia. He killed 8. The ADL disputed that was even politically motivated. Vance Bolter, this is another one. He explicitly told reporters that it wasn't due to pro-lifer Trump that the congresswoman, that he shot this congresswoman because he was anti-abortion. None of these things get included or classified correctly. And so here's what's going to happen. Every study you fuckers cite, you dishonest fucking leftist scumbag cite, I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to look for these names. And if those names aren't there, they're not cited in there, I'm going to know that you're a bunch of gutless fucking liars, didn't read your own shit, because that's what always happens, right? Every single time. You're a bunch of filthy, gutless, lying sons of bitches, and you're not going to get away with it today. We're going to go through your dumbass studies, and we're just going to look at the classification. We're going to find out that when it's reclassified correctly and we take out, prison violence from prison Nazi gangs, that, it turns out not quite as lopsided as we've been led to believe. So, yeah, I'm happy to get into this debate. And John, it's nice to meet you. And let's stomp these fucking tards.
All righty. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just first off, I want to say, Andrew, you jumped ahead of yourself a little bit there. I am not using the Cato Institute. I'm not using the ADL. I'm using the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which is the one that kind of
the CSIS.
Yeah, the CSIS.
Yeah,
one
I got him. I got him in front of me.
You got him up. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That one maps up to the DOJ one as well, which is taken down, right?
Yeah. Would you like to go through the CSIS and look at all of the disputes and problems that I have with the CSIS study?
I would actually ask you to affirmatively show me any sort of study that shows that the right wing is overwhelmingly not the committers of violence. You can poke holes in anything, and I understand that, hey, this didn't include that, and you could have up to thousands of examples. But if there are thousands of examples of violence, and your little discrepancies are well within the margin of error, unless you can provide me a study that shows that the right wing is not committing more violence, I'm sorry, I'm not going to play this doesn't count because I don't want it. So let's see your study.
First, we need to make sure that we classify these things correctly. Can we classify what you and I, or what we and your side would consider to be right or left wing, and what would fit in that category, so that we can determine if those people who fit in that category are conducting violence or not?
I bet if we get into the definition game, we're going to be here for 2 hours, but we can try.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty important that we understand that if there's people here who are being included who you don't even consider left-wing or right-wing, that they probably shouldn't be included to begin with, right?
Yeah,
and by the way,
hang
on. Let me finish. Almost done. I'll toss it back over. The biggest problem that you have with your frontal argument here is you're saying, on the positive front, if you don't show me studies, even though you're already disagreeing with the classifications in these studies, which are already out here, that somehow that means that we lose. That's absurd. I'm disagreeing with these classifications to begin with. And if you could show me the equivalent of your high-profile leadership getting shot and your president's almost getting murdered, I'd love to see it. But your studies, the studies which are used for this positive claim that right-wingers are doing it more, are very suspect.
Right. I'm not saying that if you can't give me a study that shows that left-wingers do it more, that you lose the debate. I'm saying that I have a classification that I mostly agree with that's used here. And if you have a different classification, or if you heavily disagree with this classification, I would love to see some evidence that uses your classification and also shows that left-wingers do it more.
Well, let's start with your truth
If you were
claim.
able to take the numbers out of this study and say, well, actually, I classify this differently, we can compare those two numbers, and then ultimately, I don't know, drop a new graph, sure, I could use that would be fine. But otherwise, I don't think there's a point in going through and saying, well, I have a minutia of problems with this classification, therefore, especially when in my intro I said specifically, if we want to get into the rhetoric and what is actually causing it, I think that's much more important. But we could do either one.
Well, the first thing that we would need to do is create these classifications to make these determinations, to make sure you even agree with them yourselves. Why is that so important? Because if your fucking assholes are going to be running around telling people that the right is committing much more political violence than the left, and then banking on studies as the thing which proves this for you, then you're going to need to demonstrate that first and foremost.
I think you ought to demonstrate how Darrell Brooks, who killed Sticks, was it was a politically motivated attack. Can you elaborate that for me, Andrew?
What's that?
Can you elaborate how Darrell Brooks, who killed Six, was a politically motivated attack? You mentioned him in your opening.
Oh no, I was making a comparison about how they don't make these classifications correctly by their own rules in that particular study. I'd have to bring both those studies up for the comparison, but that was the point I was making.
So Darrell Brooks' example is you just don't know nothing about that case, then, right?
Can you repeat back what I just said, please?
I want you to answer mine.
Yeah, I know, but I need you to repeat back what I just said so that I know that you know what I just said. What did I just say?
You were trying to mention in your opening how these are glaring contradictions.
No, I didn't say that they're contradictions. You're a fucking idiot. And what I said was that if you make a comparison, this thing over here is left-wing violence. This other thing that's exactly like left-wing violence is not left-wing violence. It's omitted, right? Then what I'm asking is that if we're going to make these types of comparisons, let's create a classification for what we consider left-wing to be, what left-wing violence is, and then see if I can go through an extensive list of left-wing violence and make sure that these things were actually included, because if not, we have glaring omissions. Do you agree?
Okay, and you mentioned Darrell Brooks.
Yes, as a comparison.
How is Darrell Brooks? Hold on, no, Andrew, answer my question. You mentioned it. How is that an example of left-wing extremism? Please
I
elaborate.
wasn't saying that it was. I was making a
You did. You
comparison
did.
that we can bring up all of these different names so that we can make a determination on if they are actually included as being left-wing violence, not left-wing violence, right-wing violence, not right-wing violence.
And you use Daryl Brooks. So answer the question.
What's the question?
Why did you use Daryl Brooks as a form of left-wing extremism?
I
Elaborate on the case. Tell me about the case.
I didn't, you stupid fuck.
did.
I didn't.
Yes, you did. You did.
Okay, fine.
You
Then I
quite
guess
clearly
I'll
did.
clarify as much as I possibly can since you have the IQ of the room that you're in. Very clearly, what I'm trying to do is establish a comparison contrast. Left wing versus right wing. And if we agree thing, left wing or right wing, and then we can determine if they in study or not in study. That's it.
Did you or did you not use Daryl Brooks as an example of left-wing extremism?
No, I don't think I did. I think I was making an example of
We're
comparisons.
just Go ahead. Go ahead. We'll continue.
But in
Because
any
you're
case,
lying.
I just clarified it 15 fucking times. If that's what you heard, then that's not
And
definitely not what I
just
meant.
proved that-
So who
proved that You
cares?
did not do any basic research on what the Daryl Brooks case was about. So I'm glad. We'll continue. Go ahead.
What does this have
Well,
to do
fundamentally-
with anything? In fact, even better, let's say I'm completely ignorant on all of these cases. Then I guess going through each of them and determining whether or not they're left or right-wing violence would behoove both of us, wouldn't it?
I think that we should stay focused on less about these definitions, which we can get into, but it's just gonna be a semantic.
What is more
I
fucking?
think we should stick to.
This is
So-
this is a semantical.
so-
This entire argument is semantics. Left wing versus right wing violence is completely 100% semantics. What else is it? What else is it besides semantics, bro?
Vince,
So-
the issue is that we're not going to, that we're talking about the semantics because the studies are primarily focused on classification. They're not going to include the 2020 BLM and Antifa riots because property destruction, for some reason, lighting a building on fire is not political violence. But when a white supremacist who became a white supremacist in prison to survive commits assault on another prisoner, somehow that is political violence perpetuated by the right. And your burden is much, much more stronger than simply citing a number in a study. You can't just cite a number in a study, say, hey, look, this study based off of faulty classification shows that there's more political violence from the right. You can't just do that because you don't know the proper classifications of things. And when you do adjust for the classifications of things, you understand where the largest scale scope of political violence has occurred, which side it is from. And you see that the left has persistently, time and time again, excused, rationalized, stood in front of burning buildings, saying the mostly peaceful protest behind me. And you go there and you cheer with these studies and saying, like, look at this
Chuck
study.
Schumer
This is
go
what I
out and
have.
said, that's great. So if you go to the BLM protests, you can see where Chuck Schumer actually came out and said that the small minority who have exploited the protests to wreak havoc and violence are wrong, and they are not taking part in the grand American tradition of First Amendment protests. That was from
Okay, so why do you
BLM
think
protests.
Kamala Harris
We also had
raised
Gretchen
bail
Whitmer.
funds
That's
for-
great. We still had Gretchen
That
Whitmer.
has
who
nothing to
said
do with
these
anything.
Who have taken to the streets to yes, because what it means is it's that the left, once again, as I mentioned, consistently condemns the rhetoric. I would encourage you to point out to me, for example, where you could maybe point to January 6th and say where Donald Trump condemned it, yet he then pardoned over 1,600 defendants. So again, you want to talk about how the left never condemns any of this rhetoric. There's several examples in which the left consistently condemns this rhetoric.
Wait, I'm confused.
But the right never does.
Did you just say that Donald Trump endorsed J6 by not pardoning the J6 defendants?
No,
I
by pardoning
said-
them is what he said.
Yeah,
Yes.
and how long did that take for the pardons to
How long
come
did
through?
what take?
For the pardons to come through for the J6ers?
Why does that matter?
Well, because
4 years.
because
4 years.
because the reason that would matter is because that would mean that he allowed for evidentiary findings to come through before he made the decision about pardons or not pardons, right?
Right. So when he pardons someone like Enrique Tarrio for committing, seditious conspiracy to overthrow the government, who is convicted of that and in jail for that, and he pardons him because he aligns with this political agenda, that is somehow exculpatory, matters that
I
the
think
evidence came out later.
you're-
Like, what does that have to do with it?
First of all,
You're jumping way off the scale. of
totally
the- of-
totally
We
off
are,
the
but I just
topic.
think this is
Yeah,
a
But
very
I'm
weird
actually
one.
happy.
Right.
Just very quickly, I'll engage with this. Right, the president has discretion to make those pardons based on what he considered to be a political witch hunt.
Yeah,
whether the guy was convicted, whether he was convicted or not, and just like how Joe Biden decided to pardon his kid on the way out the fucking door. Okay, thing is, it's like you could say
violence, I would say that's an endorsement
you can say what you want there, but the thing is that the president has the power to make these pardons based on what he thinks is best, and he thought that there was a political witch hunt and that this guy didn't deserve to be thrown in prison for this.
Yeah, that's a lot of words to say he pardoned a seditious conspiracist. But I want to get back to this BLM thing, because when we're talking about political violence and why or why not this is classified as political violence, I think you have to look at what is the downstream following of a partisan message from Democrats, from Republicans, and what is actually happening here. You can call BLM political violence if it's, hey, these people were trying to, well, hold on, let me see. Do you guys agree on the definition that political violence is a violent or credible threat of violence intended to influence government policy or intimidate civilians for political or ideological purposes?
I think it's close enough. I may make slight addendums, but I think it's close enough for this discussion.
I like
just in case, what would you addend?
I like to predicate it with causing harm or destruction.
Yeah, or coercion.
Sure. I would say, I'm not going to get pedantic and say that violence or threats or even, burning down buildings is somehow not political violence, just to be clear. I don't think that's why it's not counted. I think the reason BLM...
And when they were burning down police stations, did any of these studies include that? Just
I'm
wondering.
Not sure, but again, the problem
probably
is
not
doing this. It might not have for that specific one, but when you look at the totality of all of these things and you look at people rioting and taking advantage of a movement, which again, as much as it is a meme, we're overwhelmingly peaceful as a percentage, is not the same as political violence intended to spread a message, change people's ideology.
Did you really just do the fiery but mostly peaceful line?
The
fiery but mostly peaceful.
Literally,
I think it's actually really.
Had no violence.
I think it's really
them,
telling.
But, yeah.
I think it's really telling that the majority of this organization was mostly peaceful. When you have such large scale violence and destruction, $2+ billion of damages.
Here, I'll build a bridge to you, John. I think the MAGA movement is mostly peaceful as well, despite January 6th and any violence committed by MAGA.
Right. Okay. So I think there's something really crucial about the framework of this debate here, is that we're trying to analyze which party is more responsible. So when you say that, like Donald Trump pardoning people 4 years after the violence was committed, then you're not really showing any culpability for Donald Trump. He didn't do anything to cause the violence. For instance,
you can get to the January 6th causes, but I'm specifically saying that he is showing that there's no consequences to committing political violence on his behalf. The reason I'm bringing up the BLM,
they were in jail for years. What are you talking about, dude?
He wasn't president when he wanted to pardon them.
I know.
I was saying.
Wait. Donald Trump could have pardoned all of those people on his way out of office. What are you talking about?
No, I don't think he could have done that.
I think he could have. Yes, he could have.
Within his power, but I don't think it was in the political set to do it at the exact moment.
Oh, so he could have. So he could have then, is what you're saying? He could have.
I don't know if he could have mass pardoned them in.
Why not?
Before any of their sentences were finished.
Yes, he could have. You can pardon somebody before they ever even have to face a federal trial. You pre-pardon them.
I don't know if that was within his purview at the time, but maybe I'm wrong. The point is,
you're definitely wrong.
Okay, sure. The point is that we're talking about the downstream effects of the rhetoric of these politicians and how maybe a BLM riot might be like an execution of said rhetoric. So when you're looking and trying to classify BLM as political violence, you'd have to show that this violence is being perpetrated as like an extension of what these people are saying. Like, hey, I'm telling you, you need to go cause harm in this, or you need to go extend and perpetuate my message. And they're doing the violence to do that. When an overwhelming majority of these riots were just people fucking rioting and looting for no reason, no political ideology, just taking advantage of chaos.
You know, that's a very useful kind of red herring or something like this. But it's not actually demonstrated to me that. These people weren't there on the ground with Antifa terrorists, for instance, domestic terrorists, by the way, who were, and we have video after video after video of them often leading these mobs and inciting them towards violence. So the thing that's really funny.
More explicit there? What do you mean?
Yeah, guys dressed all in black show up. They start breaking windows, setting fires. Suddenly there's mobs all over the place. I know, not a good enough evidence for you, but for most people who are watching the videos, they tend to think, that looks very much like organized terrorist activity. Just saying.
Okay,
Like,
so to be
it
clear,
does.
you don't like our studies that have comprehensive, analysis and methodology, because you might disagree with the methodology, and that's fine. But your evidence that you're going to prevent to me that BLM is politically motivated in a majority is that I saw some videos and they had masks on.
Well, wait a second. Hang on. First of all, you're making a conflationary argument. I didn't make the conflation that, oh, BLM is left wing versus your studies of the right wing. I have a much more comprehensive argument. My argument would be that the left is full of many, many more mentally ill people than the right, and I can give you studies which you would agree show this. They suffer from greater rates of depression, greater rates of overall feelings of unwellness and unhappiness. And when left-wing political primary people, this would be congressmen, senators, people in political leadership, tell these mentally ill individuals in their base that they're dealing with fascists and Nazis who are trying to take away their rights, that actually creates much more of a motivation for that mentally ill base than anything on the right, who seems to be able to discern between funny rhetoric and panic mode like you guys do anytime Trump sneezes.
Would you say that you inflict and ask violence on you and your family by naming yourself Big Papa Fascist?
You mean a debate handle?
Yeah.
A satirical debate handle?
Oh, it's a joke? Okay.
Yeah.
But these people are mentally ill. They can't tell the difference.
You couldn't, hang on. You didn't think that the debate handle Big Papa Fascist was satire? Are you fucking serious? Did you think I really thought I was the biggest papaist of all the fascists? Like,
no,
what the fuck are you talking?
I think you embrace fascism in a lot of ways. You want a Christian nationalist nation.
That's not fascism. You don't know what fascism even is.
It doesn't
give me a
ultimately
break.
matter, Andrew, because like you said, you're talking to a bunch of mentally ill left-wing people. Maybe they're not able to discern whether or not it's a joke. They're not so good at humor, and maybe you're inviting violence on you. And
so right-wingers can't do satire because if they do, left-wingers may be provoked to violence. Great argument, Soy Bill.
No, I'm saying that if you're accusing people of accurately describing right-wingers as fascists when they do fascist things, and that is invoking
what
violence.
Fascist
I would
things?
say calling yourself a fascist is probably also doing that, and I would probably try to distance myself from any and all past names that I had that might invoke violence on me.
I got it. So when the left is calling right-wingers fascist for things like wanting to close off the border and having pro-life positions, that's fascism. You think that
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, okay, got it. So then that would not be justified use of calling them fascists and Nazis because they have pro-life positions? Would you like example after example after example of various left-wing politicians calling right-wingers fascist, authoritarians, and other because they have pro-life positions?
You don't even need to use the politicians. I mean, we're talking about the politicians, but ultimately I probably agree with those statements. Go ahead, Vince.
I'm curious here. So, Andrew, was your argument earlier then that because the left has predominantly more mentally ill people on their side, that using inflaming rhetoric such as fascist or things of that may invoke some of those people to act upon those impulses because of the fact that they are more mentally ill?
Worse. My argument actually is that the rhetoric specifically is targeted towards that mentally ill base in order to move them towards political action.
Okay.
Not caring about violence at all.
Gotcha. So would you agree, though, because it seems like when you say there's more mentally ill, it does not negate the fact that there is still mentally ill people on the right, correct?
I don't disagree with that. Of course not.
Okay. So then if you have certain
But I would say on the right,
would it not?
Yeah.
Oh.
I would say on the right, well, there's distinctions in the types of mental illness that you're dealing with. On the right, the types of mental illness you're usually dealing with are things like PTSD. We've seen a lot of this. Not necessarily politically oriented. A lot of times that mental illness isn't triggered by politics or political rhetoric. It's triggered by various other things because PTSD can affect people in bizarre ways. Left-wing mental illness is generally feelings of depression, feelings of unwellness, feelings of dissatisfaction, things like this. And a lot of those are actually associated with the political system as being things that make them feel like they have anxiety, make them feel like they're existing in a depressed mode. So I think that these politicians definitely target these people because they're very useful, jobless retards who show up to these protests in Portland and are clearly mentally ill. They're swinging their boobs around. You know, they all have blue hair. They have nose rings all over. Obviously, there's something wrong here with these people. Come on.
Could you give like an example, Andrew? Like, I don't know, like Chuck Schumer, I guess is probably called him a fascist, and like how you can demonstrate like this. Chuck Schumer the guy who the left, especially the radical leftists, probably more of the mentally ill ones, will agree on that, to see as a feckless, detriment to their left-wing movement, who they want to overthrow and install some communists to replace him. This is the guy who is radicalizing people to hurt right-wingers. Like, could you show me like a quote?
Who? Which guy are you
like
talking
Chuck
about
Schumer,
specifically?
or like Hakeem Jeffries, or like any like political Democrat leader who like you
oh yeah,
think
well,
is
what they do,
radicalizing like these far left.
They don't just utilize all political pundits. In fact, when I was going through to get a comprehensive list of political pundits who have called right-wing politicians fascist and Nazis, I almost couldn't find one that didn't. It was like finding the exception. It was actually even the. What's really funny is like even The Economist do it. Even the left-wing economists are like, Trump's a fascist. It's crazy.
When he does fascist shit, and
come on, man. Like, he's not a fascist. Bill Clinton. We were just watching his speech the other night, right? He came out with a much more brutal immigration policy than Trump ever had. He sounded like one of these modern right-wing authoritarian fascists.
And called for mass deportations.
He did.
So do you think?
To lock down the entire, he called to lock down the entire southern border, and he wanted more isolationism with NAFTA, actually, rather than global trade, which was interesting.
Well, still,
Andrew,
before you ask, I still wanted to answer my question as to
go ahead.
what politician that's like calling Trump a fascist is inciting these far left people, or far left people are seeing.
Well, it's not just them. So how this works is.
But we're talking about the politicians.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think that.
Well, actually, okay. Well, sure.
Like,
in fact, I'll tell you what. Just name a Democrat. Let's play a game. Name the Democrat. I'll find the quote. Okay, Chuck Schumer calling Trump or right wingers fascist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, do you think calling somebody a fascist is a call to violence, or do you think it is inflammatory rhetoric that should be condemned?
I think it depends on the context in which it's used.
Do you think it's good to kill Hitler?
But hang on.
I don't know. Hitler did it, so would you say that Hitler's good?
He's got you there, John.
Yeah, well, I guess so. I mean, on a very.
I'm leaving it open.
I think there's certainly a lot of people who think that is very good to kill Hitler. If Hitler was still around and committing genocide, then that would be a good action to take in order to ensure the safety of the world.
Okay,
and
so
when you have mainstream media,
hang on, I just want to answer, and because you soy pills being good faith, I'll be good faith back. You are actually correct in one sense that Schumer hasn't directly used the word fascist. He says instead that he's an authoritarian here to take all your rights. It's like,
no, to be
okay.
Clear, I wasn't saying
it's like, okay.
Said it. I assumed that he had called him a fascist, if anything. I'm asking you, can you demonstrate how Chuck Schumer calling him a fascist is the inspiration for these far left people who hate Chuck Schumer,
if it was just Chuck Schumer rather than the political party itself saying things like, let me give you an example, the unison of Trump is a danger to our democracy, calling for his impeachment consistently and constantly. Why is he a threat to democracy? Right now, we have Gavin Newsom, for instance, who's saying that he's going to overstay the election, that his entire purpose is to have a third term. He's coming to take all of your rights. This is a unison party message.
Yeah, and I agree with all of this, by the way. But to be clear, you're saying that this is an explicit call to violence, despite all the people saying that this is an electoral solution that we have.
No, let's untangle the argument, because there's multiple stages to it. So step one, that in and of itself would not be considered a call to violence as such. However, what it's trying to do is energize the base towards in the street protest and move them towards the idea that Trump is here to take all of your rights, take everything away from you. He's an authoritarian. He's a fascist. He's a Nazi. He's all of these various things. That then goes down to the governor level, goes down even to the state level, and it goes to the pundits on MSNBC, CNN. They begin to regurgitate the same exact things. And yes, the idea is to motivate these people who have a very mentally ill base to go out and conduct political violence. It does seem to translate that way. Every time I see them out in the street, they seem to be doing violent shit. I don't know what to tell you. 2020, the summer of love, they were out there doing violent shit. The protest we just covered that happened in California, out there doing a bunch of violent shit. The Portland protest that we just covered, also doing violent shit, fighting in the streets. They were trying to provoke the cops. It's like, what do you want me to do? Every time I look at the street and there's a bunch of leftist protesters that seems to be accompanied by a bunch of fucking violence and the media saying, it's fine, it's good, it's all good.
My question is, let's just assume for a second that there was a fascist and a bunch of people who were fighting against this fascist had a mentally ill base. Would it then be irresponsible of them to accurately describe their opponent as fascist, because ultimately some of the most mentally ill and fringe people on that base would then go and commit violence that you think is bad? Or how would one deal with that if they truly didn't believe that their opponent was that?
So contextually, right, if it's the case, there's an actual Nazi who's in office, okay, who is trying to bring back the Third Reich, and it just so happens that you're motivating your base against an actual Nazi, and some of them are mentally ill. Yes, of course, there wouldn't be any problem with that. The whole point then would be to overthrow, though, wouldn't it? Wouldn't the whole point of that be? Hang on. Wouldn't the whole point of that be that you're motivating this base against this Nazi to do what? Good things to him? Do you want him to do good things to him? Like, what do you want him to do to him?
If you truly thought that there was no possible way for you to do this through the system, then yeah, why would you be out there getting people to canvass? Why would you be out there telling people, go register to vote? Why would you do anything other than, hey, we need to mobilize our little infiltration?
Hang on, here's the thing. It's really funny. Is like, yes, there's one branch that does that, and then there's other branches which seem to motivate people to shoot political commentators, take shots at the president of the United States, beat people in the streets, set cars on fire, set buildings on fire, and are very unapologetic about it, and are continuing to organize yet another No King's Day nationally to do even more of this shit. So the thing is like, again, I'm going to throw this back to you because I answered in good faith. Yes, of course you would motivate your population, but motivate them to do what? You're not going to be motivating them to do good things to the Nazi in charge, are you?
Well,
let him answer. Let him answer, dude.
This is something that I agree with most of the politicians in the way that they're classifying Trump as a fascist. I think Nazi is obviously too far. He's not that. But calling him,
they're not going to do good things to the fascists, right?
And I'm saying, look, guys, if I thought this was a non-electoral solution, there was no electoral solution here, that you had absolutely no other option, kind of like what Trump did in January 6th and saying, hey, your country failed you, Mike Pence failed you. I would say, yeah, maybe we should go do a violence. But obviously, I don't think we're there yet. I wouldn't be having this debate if I thought the only option was violence. So when we look at like the BLM stuff, and we look at the way the Democratic politicians, whether it's Newsom, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and say things like, I mean, I have a quote here. He says, there's no place for violence. There's no place for looting or destroying property or burning churches or destroying businesses, et cetera, constantly condemning this. I don't understand how you can say, well, by accurately describing this person the way that they believe him to be, and then saying also don't commit violence, we can win this electorally. This is somehow necessarily going to result in violence only because there are, I guess, a disproportionate amount of mentally ill people on the left wing. It doesn't particularly make sense.
I'm sorry. Aren't you a person who believes in the idea of dog whistles?
Yeah, but it's not a dog whistle.
Okay, so hang on. So
you
obviously politicians aren't going to come out directly and go, "Hey guys, you need to start killing right-wing politicians, and you need to start killing right-wing political commentators."
Right?
They would say things instead like, "This person is trying to, I don't know,
like hell." I mean,
they're trying. Hang on. I'll engage with you. Let me finish the point.
I'm
almost done. I'm almost done, bro. Almost done. So, like, saying things like, Donald Trump is trying to mobilize the military so that he can declare martial law and exist for a third term. Yeah, that's not really in the domain, I think, anymore of like, we're just trying to motivate our political base to get out there and get charged to vote him out. How do you vote a person out who you're claiming is trying to stay for an additional term by using the military? How do you do that? You don't do it. So the whole point is, yes, I think that there's a bit of dog whistling going on there of, hey, he's an authoritarian fascist who's trying to overstay his welcome in the Oval Office, and he's prepared to use the military to put you down. So we need to really get these guys because they're a bunch of fascist Nazis. That's very much what the call is right now.
Yeah,
yes.
I think if they said that was the only thing that's going to happen, I think saying he may try is much different. But I would agree that if they said Donald Trump will definitely 100% do this, and he's not going to leave office, he's going to use the military to crack down, I would say
that's what Newsom's saying.
No, he's not saying that's exactly definitely. He's saying there's a good chance.
Oh, come on, man.
The difference being that there's
I'm 87.5% sure that he's a Nazi who's trying to take power.
Can I please respond? So the difference being that there's all these other avenues that we've explored that Trump is also trying to explore that may not involve the military, such as changing the 22nd Amendment or running as vice president and then having J.D. Vance step down. He's talking about all sorts of other avenues, and it's like, okay, there's definitely this guy has demonstrated in the past that he does not want to leave office. He tried to, use false electors to stay for a third term, but we still defeated them electorally in that because the guardrails held, thank God. So saying that, oh, well, if this was the only option, maybe that could be potentially a dog whistle, but clearly all of these Democratic politicians are not operating under the assumption that violence is the only option.
So I mean, what level of surety you would actually need Gavin Newsom to be like, hey, everybody, I'm 100% sure this Nazi's trying to overstay his stay in the Oval Office and use the military right now to suppress people. So what does he have to say to convince you that he means what he's saying?
I think if you
can provide an actual quote that you are using?
Against
I can provide an entire video clip of this.
Democrat politicians refuse to condemn it and say, you know what, maybe this should happen more. I think that would be more of an indication of, they want more of this to happen. But at every single step, at every opportunity, they condemn this violence over and over.
Yeah.
And
meanwhile,
over
all the influencers are dancing after Charlie Kirk dies. We go to TikTok for the follow. We go to TikTok.
Influencers and not talk about actual politicians.
Hang on a second. Didn't I just tell you that this is a tiered system? I walked you through the entire argument, and you said, Soy, hang on, Soy, you said, Soy, I largely agree with your assessment there. Those were your exact words.
I do largely agree, but again, when I bring
I don't know what to tell you.
Left-wing politicians are overwhelmingly condemning this, and you say, well, these influencers with a much lower reach aren't, and it's like, okay, well, are you going to address the fact that we're already talking about the inequality between the left and right?
Oh my God, politicians are speaking out of both sides of their mouth. That's so crazy that a politician on the one hand says I condemn the violence, but on the other hand, they go, oh, but wait a second, we're going to give you a place inside of this major metropolitan area to fucking riot. Oh, but we condemn the violence. It's like, what are you fucking talking about here, Soy?
Yeah, so you're setting up the idea that left-wing politicians giving permits and spaces for people to protest, which may turn violent at some point, is the same as them.
They let them take
advocating and perpetuating people shooting politicians and pundits and shit.
They let them take over an entire spot. He was finished. He was finished. You fucking idiot! Shut up. Now, by the way, Soy. Yeah, did you see that? You see how I was right, doing everything wrong, right, and you're a dumb mod. So anyway, back to this, Soy. For you, just so that you understand, right? They took over an entire area of a city and called it Chaz Chop, said it was a neutral zone, declared it independent of the United States of America, and then had armed people. Hang on. Let me finish. Let me finish. Yes, not only was it downstream of that, but it was very clear that the politicians who were in charge of said city weren't going to do a fucking thing about it, while at the same time they were condemning violence. It's like, give me a fucking break with this shit.
Can you like?
Oh wait, so it's
interesting. If I were to go and ask
Andrew.
some of these like Chaz people, like who inspired them to do their Chazing? Do you think it would be like a Hakeem Jeffries, a Chuck Schumer, a Joe Biden, the radical Democrat left that inspired them to make a little stupid fucking square of a city and have a lawless zone, which was then cracked down on? Like, it's just ridiculous.
Cracked down on after how many weeks?
The left-wing politicians. Now, you might say that there are some left-wing governors or like super ultra progressive, attorney generals in like maybe like Portland or places like this that might actually agree with some of these crazy Antifa.
They don't just agree with them. They seem to be very assisting towards them.
Yeah, sure. Maybe even so. But the point is,
like in Portland, for instance,
as a totality of these parties, this is not something that like Antifa is not aligned with the Democrats.
Yeah, the thing is,
there's a very strong ideological backing for Antifa and BLM in the Democrats. The Democrats champion the Black Lives Matter movement. What are you talking about? Like this is why
you notice how you just jumped to the BLM thing, which is not what I'm talking about. I was talking about Antifa.
He said, he literally just said BLM was highly ideologically driven by the left. What do you mean he's not talking about BLM?
I wasn't talking about that. But if you look at BLM and the way that the left-wing Democrat politicians were responding to it, completely condemning all of this violence, saying rioting is completely unacceptable. And
bring to me another drink.
Harris promoted the Minnesota Freedom Fund to bail out the violent rioters. Like, I mean, come on.
I think that's the closest thing you can get to maybe she's advocating for violence, or maybe like a Maxine Waters saying you need to go get up in their faces. But then when you compare it to the totality of statements where she's saying violence is not okay, but maybe we should help.
How many of these left-wing organizations? How many of these left-wing organizations who are filled to the brim with attorneys back up all sorts of projects which are designed to bail out protesters, quote protesters, when they get cracked down on because they're breaking the law in the streets? and they pay their bail funds. NGOs will back up many of these organizations. I pointed this out in my last debate with Vince. I have a massive list of NGOs, which we can go through, who organized the No King's Day riots, and they were riots, and there were riots before those days. So the thing is like, I can show you the NGOs who helped organize this, and it's like to pretend that these people aren't working in unison with each other and aren't pushing towards violence. I think it's just crazy at this point. By the way,
hey, Andrew,
another hang on, almost done. Another narrative.
I've been hanging on for 30
another
minutes,
narrative.
So
well, hang on for one more minute. Hang on for one more minute. So the thing is like, it was also you guys, remember, and your side largely, that was trying to distance yourself from violence by pinning it on a right-wing graper after Charlie Kirk was shot. Almost the entire narrative of the influencer left and the legacy media, which is left-wing, was trying to do this. And they've done everything possible, in fact, to say, nope, we didn't do it. It had nothing to do with our rhetoric. And then less than a week later, right? Oh, go to Twitter right now. Right. Charlie Kirk's a fascist Nazi. He's a fascist Nazi.
We've said, to be clear, because I've never said that. If anything, I thought the Groiper thing was jumping the gun, to be clear. But Vince, go ahead.
Yeah. Andrew, how many people were arrested during the Los Angeles protests?
Which one?
The one from the summer in June of 2025.
I'm not sure the numbers.
Anti-ICE riots.
Yeah, I'm not sure the numbers.
It was over 400 arrests. So again, and when we pair that with Gavin Newsom's sentiment of, hey, we need you to peacefully protest, it doesn't seem like he's enabling it. It seems like he's actually, in fact, several people were arrested for felony charges like assault against police officers and for possessions of Molotov cocktails and a gun. So again, if this was, Gavin Newsom dog whistling, I would imagine we would expect far less arrests. And I remember actually in our previous debate where you said the cops were just standing around
and then showed video proof
where they were not.
Yeah, they were.
They were not just standing around. And evidently they weren't, because
not only were they, but we showed the video and demonstrated, and you look like an idiot because we showed it. Yeah. So we showed it.
You acknowledge that there were 400 arrests that were made by Los Angeles PD due to those protests, right?
Sure.
Okay, so then it wasn't that Gavin Newsom was standing down or allowing this to happen. It seems like they were very adamant in trying to make sure that those who were not peacefully protesting were being held accountable. Like Donald Trump, who ended up pardoning those who actually committed crimes.
Here's how this tended to work during those protests. If you actually assaulted officers or gave them a hard time, they would arrest your ass. That's true. Okay, but they largely were standing around and watching everybody burn shit to the fucking ground, including what happened in the overpasses there. As you saw police on either side with paramedics on standby in case one of these protesters might have accidentally hurt themselves, lobbing a fucking rock over onto a police car that they had just set on fire. They wanted to make sure that those guys would get the help that they fucking needed. But the thing is, what's really funny about it, if you attack the cops directly, they don't put up with that shit. That's true. That's true.
I think we need to be there's a lot of like discussion that's like very beyond the scope that I'm seeing from our opponents here, because we need to be very clear. The left makes a climate that allows this type of violence to be highly associated with them ideologically. Like, for instance, we have a whole bunch of factions of the left that have risen up. I can name countless examples. You just gave an example, the anti-ICE rights. That's very ideologically fundamental to the left right now. We have the BLM movements that was very ideologically backed by the left as well. We have the pro-Palestine faction of the left, which the left constantly has to cater to and has caused countless of damages on college campuses. Pro-life journalists going and interviewing people and getting punched in the face. And you have our presidents being shot at, and you have our influencers dead. So it's like you need to have a very strong conviction to show that the party is very responsible by their ideological backing and their influence. And when you see bullets etched with Antifa slogans that are largely perpetuated by Democrats who are calling Charlie Kirk fascist, I think it is very clear what is going on here. There's a great unison with these politically violent actions and the party. Ideologically backed political ideologies from the party.
Let's give the kid a chance.
Highly associated with these acts.
John, I guess I have to ask, if you were to like, sorry, Vince, I'll let you go because I know I've been talking a lot, but like if you were to like ask like an Antifa like rioter, one of these violent people, like, why do you think Charlie Kirk is a fascist? Do you think a single one of them would say it's because Joe Biden said so? It's because Gavin Newsom said so. It's because, and not these people are radicalized in their like little Marxist communist circles, and they read. I mean, you go to UC Berkeley, you should know this of all people because I know the people at UC Berkeley. They are learning this in like, you know, their little like hippie circles. This is not coming down from like Democrat politicians. Absolutely no one is being inspired by the Kamala Harris rhetoric on ICE.
Who does it come down to is in charge of these hippie circles? How do the people in charge of those hippie circles, how does that information get disseminated to them, do you think?
This is going to get super anecdotal for me, but when I encounter these people, it's all people that talk about theory and reading communist manifestos and stuff. But if you want to say that this is somehow perpetuated by left-wing politicians, I don't really see evidence for that.
Wait a second. I'm just following your line. These people they do have organizers. You agree that that's true?
Well, not really Antifa, but
yeah, they really do. In fact, I can give you one of the organizers who ran a project, which is probably where you get a lot of your stats from. And he said on camera, and I have a clip here, he literally says that he's Antifa and that Antifa does organize. So I don't know where you guys are coming up with that.
I really hate the like Joe Biden, like it's just an idea, because I think that is a deflection. I mean, obviously they're groups of people and they have like a symbol that like unites them, but ultimately it's not some like big top-down organization with like it's the head of Antifa. It's you get these little pockets of people that all kind of agree, read similar stuff, and decide to go to the
these think the same thing.
Universities here, the universities are a hub for this type of ideological backing from people where, yeah, sure, the Marxists come together at universities, which is completely dominated by the left. So that is like another form of mainstream left-wing politics that is going into the educational system and is influencing people to become radicalized. And so it's like, yeah, if I asked an Antifa, like, why did you shoot Charlie Kirk?
I love talking shit to this mod too. It's one of my favorites.
But when you take a look at
like, shut up, mod. You suck, mod. Shut your fucking mouth, mod. I just like doing that.
Charlie Kirk is a fascist. To believe that all these people on the right really want to cause you harm, are threats to democracy, are Nazis, are Hitler, to the point where you are going to take actions because you are convinced by the social constructivist narratives that the left constantly perpetuates, and you think that when you commit an action in the name of social justice, that it is a good action. No matter what law you're violating, no matter what you're doing, so you can choose what laws to obey because it is in the name of some arbitrary social justice. All of this is under the umbrella of the left wing, who has created these ideologicals, these influences that have very predisposed people to commit these acts.
I guess the problem I'm having is this like completely asymmetrical analysis where we can look at the left and say, yes, they condemn it totally. Yes, they arrest and punish these people. And yes, they say absolutely nothing that would indicate that doing this is okay. But when the right wing calls people fascists or Marxists or any of these other things and commits political terrorism, that is a direct downstream like of
it's because of PTSD.
Of right wing.
PTSD.
It's fringe. It's right wing.
Gee, what are they arresting all these people for? Are they arresting them for political violence, Soy? What are they arresting them all for?
We're getting way out of the framework of the debate here.
So you're saying that a bunch of left-wingers are conducting a bunch of violence and have to be arrested? Is that what you're saying, Zoe?
I'm saying that yes, that left-wingers do political violence.
Yes, they sure do. And would you say that that's been kind of an ongoing theme here recently? And I mean, he just said 400 of them had to be arrested for conducting violence in California recently.
Wrong.
No,
not necessarily correct.
And what I remember,
I thought you just said that they're cracking down on this behavior.
I can explain that.
Okay, I can't wait. I think we lost Vince.
400 arrests.
I think we lost Vince.
Oh, yep.
Hold on, can you hear me?
All right. Yep.
Okay.
You're good.
So it said the vast majority of arrests have been for failing to leave the area in defiance of requests from law enforcement. So essentially staying out, and they're telling them to move and they didn't move and they got arrested. The other ones were more serious charges, and it was a handful, not a whole lot of them, but it was a handful of more serious charges, including for assault against police officers and then possession of a Molotov and cocktail. So again, when we talk about, but the thing that's really rich, like Soypill said,
not leaving an area, so no, not violence.
He just cited violence.
Guys, let Vince finish.
The wild thing about this to me is it's exactly like Soypill said. Y'all are providing numerous examples of the left, and that's fair, fine. Let me just provide a few here, because we had the 2024 election that happened last year, and there were numerous calls made into certain election and polling places. We also saw 2025 where the CDC shooter was all upset about the COVID-19 shot that he had gotten, and he didn't like. He thought he was melting his brain or whatever it was.
So
we also had the 2022 Buffalo. See, and that's right there exactly what I said in my opening statement. I'm glad you mentioned that, Andrew, because I believe in my opening statement I said when it's the left will openly condemn that violence. They say, hey, there's no place in there. When there was a protest, they'll say, hey, there's no place for this violence. But when the right does it, they then say, hey, guess what? It's because of mental illness, which is what I said. Or they'll say it's because of PTSD, but they'll never own their rhetoric.
That's really
have led up to that.
Wait. That's really
and anti.
Oh, you just cut out again.
Oh,
sorry, man.
We lost Vince again. All right. Well,
that's God smiting you for lying, by the way. But anyway, so where were we? Go ahead.
So what I'm saying is that we can point to certain rhetoric that may have led these mentally deranged people on the right go towards these particular acts.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about, for example, that one person who talked about the COVID-19 shot. We've seen with the Buffalo shooter, for example,
sure.
Anti-immigration sentiment, and we can talk about all that. And whereas on the left, we'll sit here when we have someone that does these things, condemn those particular violent actors. But on the right, they immediately, for example, we just saw the Mormon incident where the guy drove the truck through the church. And what was the first thing that everybody said? Instead of saying, hey, maybe our rhetoric is pretty bad, they go, hey, he's suffering from PTSD. It's not our rhetoric. Our rhetoric has nothing to do with it.
Was Christianity is under attack, and this is the left wing doing this. Then they said, once they realized it was a MAGA guy, that it was not.
Oh, well,
exactly.
the thing is that my understanding is that the entire Mormon thing happened because of a girl that he was interested in, and they broke up. And yes, the guy was crazy. And so this is the thing that's really funny. So I'll just be very unequivocal with this, just like I was with Destiny. I condemn all acts of political violence, right or left, period. Am I saying that there's never any such thing as incendiary rhetoric which comes out of the right? Of course not. Am I saying that there's no such thing as people who say things which could trigger people to go do violent acts? Of course not. Am I even saying that there's a way to 100% avoid that and have speech? Of course not. Has nothing at all to do with this conversation about which side is doing this more. And so as we dive into this, we need to be very precise. Remember how I wanted to get these semantics in order, and you never want to fucking do that because you think it's a trap. You think it's a trick, even though even though I keep trying to just tell you it's a great way to avoid equivocation. And Vince, if you do it more, we wouldn't have to run into this so much. So the thing is here that's interesting, I'm willing to go case by case. It could be the case.
Except for Darrell Brooks.
It could be the case. I told you I was willing to go into that case as well. I was just explaining to you that I was making comparison contrast there about why it would be important for us to utilize studies the correct way by making correct classifications we could agree to. Again, semantics, very simple. The thing that's really interesting here is like, if you give me a case and it's very clear that this was motivated by the right, and there's compelling, significant evidence that it was, my side always universally condemns that, by the way. And Charlie Kirk universally condemned that, by the way. We always condemn it. We're always saying, I was the one on the Pierce Morgan panel saying, of course, I condemn this type of violence. It was the representation for your side, the Coomer gremlin, who just couldn't quite bring himself to say, probably wasn't a great idea that you took a shot at Trump and killed Charlie Kirk. It was him. So the thing is we can't, hang on.
But we're talking about our politicians.
Yeah, we can't.
Really
you keep switching, though. You keep switching between the two. You're doing kind of like the worst form of equivocation, because we start with me saying this works from the top down and you agree. So you've already agreed with me semantically that this is the case.
That pundits are way lower on that hierarchy.
What would that have to do with the left or the right conducting more violence? Why would it need to be necessary that this is driven 100% by the top of the hierarchy, rather than it could be conducted by Antifa terror cells? It could be conducted by radicalization on side of college campuses. It could be conducted in all sorts of Discord groups, Telegram groups. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the top down. I don't think that the top-down rhetoric helps.
For it, then we need to look at one.
We're not just talking about that, though. We're talking about who conducts more of it.
Right. So if we want to talk about who conducts more of it, and we really want to read through the CSIS study, and we can talk about it, there's a reason why. Like, we can, but like, it's going to be real boring. And the problem is, at the end of it, you're either going to say, well, I don't agree with the methodology, and then not provide an alternative methodology that somehow parses through the numbers that you're satisfied with. And it's ultimately not going to get us anywhere, because you're
That's
never
not,
say,
wait.
Right,
that is not how science works, Soy. Science does not work where you say, I have an experiment or some type of data collection here which is easily falsifiable and you have to replace it. That's not how that works. I don't need to give you alternatives to things that are bullshit. I don't need to.
I can name a bunch of things and look at these videos, and when I say a study, you can poke holes in it.
You remember how earlier you said that the study is not necessary for the demonstration?
Methodology, or go through and parse through the cases used in this study and say, this is how they all are classified under my methodology and how then the numbers would add up, and then show me that new graph. But if you can do neither of those things, I'm going to choose to actually use the study.
Okay, well, let's use your own study. Okay, to make the demonstration. Since Trump was since Trump was reelected, this is according to Cato, the left has killed. It is. Shut up and let me finish. It is. Dude. If you shut up, I'll show you.
Andrew.
The left has killed 2 times as many people, according to the CSIS. The one that you're referencing, the left-wing terrorism is at its worst in 30 years. According to the CSIS.
Are you talking about the little bar at the end where the left-wing terrorism has gone up by a little compared to the previous year, and then the right-wing bar is
cherry-picking. He's cherry-picking.
You're looking at the very last year that's not complete. Is that how we're going to do
I just told you that according to Cato, the left's killed 2 times as many since Trump's election.
In the year since Trump's election, so you're only going to selectively look at 8 months, just to be clear. So to be clear, if your argument
when the violence has, you mean when the violence has exploded?
7 months exclusively, and we only look at that. Sure. Okay.
Okay. Hang on. Wait a second. Wait a second. When was it that the left became completely mobilized towards violence? Was it under fucking Biden or was it under somebody else? Soy? Who else? Who? Oh, yeah, like you mean under Trump, when they did mass protests before against Trump, and now we see the cycle repeating again under Trump. The most critical term of showing this.
Only able to look at you're like, okay, I'll use the stats, but only if I can pick out this very last bar of this last year, which I'll agree with. I'm saying, yeah, actually, this is true. I'm not contesting this study.
Good.
I'm agreeing. The left is more violent in 2025, according to the study, in the very last year. Now, if we're talking about that, I don't know which debate you signed up for, but I signed up for as a totality.
Okay, hang on.
This is graph.
This is perfect. Actually, this is perfect. This is perfect.
It's pretty funny to look at this and say, "Oh, yep, this is definitely a left-wing."
This is perfect. And hang on. Let us finish our exchange. Are you saying? Dude,
this is the funny thing.
This fucker will never let us finish an exchange. Go ahead. Go ahead, Vince. I'm sure whatever you're about to say is important. Go ahead.
Yeah, here we go. So now that you're hearing me. So the issue here is that you're pointing to this, but I remember when Trump was in office the first time, and we do have.
I don't know. I can't even understand the guy. So anyway, back to you, Soy Pill.
I'm sorry. My internet's garbage.
It is garbage. You know what? I'm going to hang on, Vince. I can actually help you with this. If you have a mobile hotspot, turn your mobile hotspot on and shut off your internet.
Turn that on.
Yeah, turn your mobile hotspot on. So anyway, back to this, Soy Pill. Actually, now we're getting somewhere. So this is actually great. So you made the concession. You agree. Left-wing violence under Trump.
It's an agreement of objective reality.
Again. So
by the way, for the past
am I allowed to fucking talk?
But now that you're looking at the last year, you're like, yep, it's true. So no, it's not.
Okay. So anyway, I'll try to finish the point because you're about to get fucked here. So thing is on the CSIS, if you make the concession that it is the case that under Trump, left-wing violence is much higher, killed 2 times as many people. You agree with all of this. You're making the concession there. The thing that's really funny is this is why I want to go through the methodology. Because if you make the concession that the left is far more violent right now, and I agree with you, all that's left is whether or not the left has been violent this entire time, which is why we need to go through the methodology of the rest of the study. You see how that works? Because if I can demonstrate in the rest of the study, you're classifying things wrong, but we can agree the left is more violent now, we've won the fucking debate, Soy.
To be clear, no, because the debate is not. Is the left wing more violent in the current year? Is the who?
I bet those glasses make you see better.